Spoiler, Intel's Arc A380 kinda sucks. This is the Intel Arc A380, Intel's first venture into the GPU market and released this year in 2022 in June. Now obviously a title and intro of this video doesn't really make this little Arc GPU seem all that good, and that's because it isn't. So let's dive into why this card was summoned from Satan's rear end and why it might actually have some potential. So the system I had this card in featured a Ryzen 3700X on an X570 motherboard combined with 32 gigabytes of DDR4 3600 megahertz RAM. And yes, re-sizeable bar was on. And before we get to the games, I didn't really have a great start of this GPU. When I was trying to pull up the metrics in MSI Afterburner, it could recognize the card as an Intel Arc A380, but it couldn't actually show me any metrics like fan speed, power percentages, nothing. It wouldn't show me anything. It was like, it existed, but it didn't. It just couldn't read it in a way. So that wasn't fantastic. And then the Intel performance monitoring system didn't really show what I was looking for. Like there isn't really an FPS counter or 1% lows and that sort of stuff. So it just sort of tells you what the GPU is doing. And that's why the games I've chosen are ones that have inbuilt benchmarks so I could actually see what was going on FPS wise. Moving on from that disaster though, I thought I would try Intel's capture software, but unfortunately no matter the codec, resolution or frame rate I tried, once I pressed record while a game was open, I was getting only like 1 FPS. So I guess you could say it didn't feel exactly like butter, but more like being dragged nutsack first through broken glass. On to the games then. So in Warzone 2.0 at 1080p with a minimum preset and Intel's upscaling tech enabled at quality, and the latest drivers that are supposedly meant to increase performance in this title, you can see that we're not really looking at a playable frame rate. So then moving on to Cyberpunk 2077, it just kept crashing. It kept crashing at the CDPR logo, and I tried to repair the game and then I did a fresh install of it as well, but nothing, it just kept crashing. So yeah, I couldn't use Cyberpunk, couldn't launch it, couldn't get past that logo, so I guess we'll just move on. And then with motivation quite low, I moved on to F1 2022, where I was actually impressed with the average of 70 FPS at the low preset without any upscaling tech applied. Nice. Again, in Total War Warhammer 3, we saw a decent average of 55 FPS on the low preset, again at 1080p, and that's not bad considering I find the Total War games can be quite hard to run with good FPS. And then for our final game, I tried an older title with Tomb Raider. We saw an above 80 FPS average on the Ultra preset at 1080p, so the Arc GPU doing fairly well in an older title which is said to be the Achilles heel of this Arc family of GPUs. So I can't help feel a little bit disappointed by this GPU. I knew there'd be problems with driver problems, and I do think that eventually in the future they are going to get solved and it is going to be a much better card than it is right now. At least a more stable one and a bit more consistent in sort of every single game. Like, I hope that Warzone sort of thing gets sorted out. And to be honest, I don't think the performance is really there for a 2022 GPU, as you can definitely find better cards on the used market for much less money than this is going for brand new. And one that could potentially give it a run for its money is a GPU that featured in the last video, the GTX 950.